Hi guys, it is another really muggy day, which is quite unbearable, but today I'm here to do another reading wrap up. So I only read like 5 books this month, which I think is maybe the least amount that I've read so far this year. Correct me if I'm wrong if you know otherwise, but I'm actually fine with that because I've been playing again a lot of Animal Crossing. I've kind of fallen back in love with that, so that's also taken up some of my spare time. So yeah, just a few pointers before we begin. Some news and updates. Oh, I didn't do a bit about how many ebooks I've completed, so let me just quickly check in with last month. Okay, that was super quick because it's not a big jump by any means, but last month I read 17 out of 20 NetGalley ebooks, and this month I read 1, so that's just 18 out of 20. So my goal for the month, or my goal for the year rather, is to read 20 of those at least. I've nearly finished that goal, so I will continue with just eating into them, maybe do another 20, let's see. So what else? I was also taking part in the #Black Resilience book tour, which was so much fun. Definitely keep checking out that hashtag because you're going to find so many cool bookstagrammers that have taken part in it, shared pictures, all that sort of stuff. Basically what it was about was just promoting black books. There was different prompts for each days. I sort of dipped in and out of it, and I didn't do the actual prompt on the actual days. It was just a random sort of bish bash on my part, but so many people did do it more structured, so definitely check out the hashtag if you're interested in getting some really cool recommendations. I personally had a lot of fun taking part and meeting new people to talk to in the comments was really fun too, so there's that. In terms of the reading breakdown, really simple one this time. I read 1 ARC / NetGalley / ebook, 3 physical, and then for the first time 1 audio, which was cool, so that's a total of 5. I read, the way I've categorized it is, it's kind of a bit confusing, but 1 contemporary, 2 genre / litfic, and 4 adult contemporary. Again, the numbers don't match up, it's just some of those are placed in double categories. And as for my summer TBR, I'm just kind of polishing off the last one there. I managed to get to 2 of the books on that list, so I've still got a bit to go, but we shall see. So getting straight into it, the first book I read was Sula by Toni Morrison. I've got a whole reading vlog on this if you're interested, but if not, a quick summary of this book is we're following 2 young girls, Sula and Nell. They're basically friends from early age, but there's something about Sula that I think is a bit sinister and a bit strange, and nobody really, well, she disappears for a while and comes back 10 years later, and everybody sort of has this vibe about her, but it's more than just them two. You've got a lot about the family background, about how they grew up, who their parents are, that sort of thing. And yeah, it was an interesting read for sure. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I was definitely curious as to where the characters ended up. I loved learning about Sula's grandmother in particular, and it's weird because I did actually get quite enthralled whilst reading it, but I just felt like it took me longer than it should have to get to grips with things. I mean, it is quite a short book, and I just felt like a bit like I was missing something for most of it. There were some very unsettling and random scenes that didn't always make sense, and sometimes I felt were just there for shock value personally. And I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't actually get to see the 10 years that Sula left the hometown and what was happening in both Sula and Nell's lives at that time. It was just a bit of a time jump, and I'm a bit funny with time jumps, I don't really like those. But yeah, if you do want more thoughts and kind of in the moment feelings, check out that reading vlog, linked in the cards for you. Then I finished off A Brief History of 7 Killings by Marlon James. This was the Man Booker Prize winner of 2015, and this one I really did enjoy too. This one I won't go too much into depth with because I've got a book review just sitting there that I really need to edit. But yeah, I think I'll go and talk about some quotes in that as well, but just briefly again. This is set mainly in 1976, but it's kind of like over a time span as well, and it's surrounding the event of the attempted murder of Bob Marley in Jamaica. But again, it's one of those books that is more than just that. That seems like the driving plot, but really it's about all the characters involved and maybe not even involved. The people that feel like they know Bob Marley, but some people that were directly involved with trying to kill him and why. And like this almost fictional account of what their lives could have been like for the decisions they chose and stuff like that. And it was very, very, very interesting. I loved it way more than I was expecting to, and I gave that one a 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read the NetGalley book that I've categorised as just the one NetGalley book I read this month, or finished this month at least, because I am reading another one, and that was Mrs. Death by Selena Godden, and the release date is the 28th of January 2021, and this one I gave a 5 stars, and it was really cool. Like, it was such a weird, out there concept, but for me personally it really worked. I guess you can kind of see it, I don't know how the author categorizes it, but perhaps you could see it as a strand of bizarro fiction in a way. So what it is basically is we're following this guy called Wolf, and he's had a lot of trauma in his life and deaths at an early age, and he becomes infatuated in a way with telling the story of Mrs. Death. Now, Death in this story is personified as the least cared about, the least looked for person in the world, which is an old black woman, and so that's how she's like embodied in this story, which is really interesting. There's some really cool discussions as well on why that is and the meaning behind that, and why like the general sort of personification in Death is either the Grim Reaper or in turn a man, which is really cool. And so he's managed to tap into this way to speak directly to her, and it's so interesting, and it's one of those books where you kind of just have to read it to kind of get more of a synopsis, because I can't really explain it without going depth into the story, which probably didn't make much sense. That was a weird structure of sentence that I just said. But yeah, the writing style I loved. It was lyrical and very beautiful, blended in some poetry within it. I believe Selena Godden is a poet first, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know she's also a poet, so you could really see some of the talents that she had here. Very multi-faceted, is that the word? I loved it. The concept in itself, as I just briefly tried to explain, is very unique, and because of that in itself, it just gripped me. I was like, where is this gonna go? Like, it made you just think about so many things. Again, I loved the personification of death in this, and again the discussions of why this was the case. Also, I must say the author is really nice, because when I was about halfway through this book, I just had like this epiphany moment where I needed to gush about how much this book was helping me and making me think things, and I just wrote her a weird long message on Instagram, and she replied back, and she was the sweetest, so nice, so lovely, and it's just nice when you get authors that engage with, I know not all authors can or should engage with like their readers or whatever, I don't know, but it's nice when you get that and you just feel listened to as a reader, especially when you've got something really praising to say about their works and how it's touched you. And yeah, I just really liked that interaction. Some cons, honestly, the only one that really kind of sort of sparked in my mind is it may cause a bit of anxiety. Obviously, we're talking a lot about death and grief and all the things that kind of surround that idea. So yeah, it may make you think and feel heavy things for a while, but I think I came out of it all right, and for the better really, because it really kind of taught me some stuff which was strange. Yeah, I loved this book. Fantastic read. 5 stars for sure. And then, as I mentioned briefly earlier, I read my first audiobook, and technically not my first, but I've got a video about why I haven't read audiobooks before, and I will link that in the cards if you're interested. But yes, this is The Girl with a Loudoun Voice by Abby Dare. I think that might be how you pronounce her name. And this particular one, it was narrated by Ronke Adekalejo, I believe, again, is how you pronounce it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've tried to practice. I'm pretty sure that's how they were saying it. Yeah, I was listening to a few things, and obviously in the audiobook it says the names of the authors and stuff, so hopefully I pronounced that properly. And this I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Just quickly, briefly about where I listened to it to. Someone posted on Instagram that the BBC were doing a reading of it, BBC4 radio I think, and you can access it on just, I think on the website BBC Sounds is how I listened to it, and it was broken down into 10 chapters, about 14 minutes each, per chapter, and yeah, so that's how I listened to it, and it was free. But yeah, so what it's about is a young girl called Aduni who lives in Nigeria. I think she's about 13 or 14 years old, and it's really sad actually, because all her life her mother and father were very encouraging of her to get an education and to kind of pursue that career, that life for herself, to better herself. And then unfortunately very early on in the story her mother dies, and her father, struggling with money, he backs out of that promise to her and her mother of letting Aduni go and pursue her education, and actually ends up selling her to a rich man in the village for money. And he's far older, he's a pure grown adult actually, and yeah, she becomes his third wife, and you see all the troubles and trials and tribulations that she faces, but ultimately there is that hope and determination to get the education and get the life that Aduni wants, which is inspiring in itself. So I've got to say, the music and the storytelling itself by Ronke really enhanced the experience for me. Hearing that as basically my first audiobook, it makes me wonder why I've never read or listened to them before, because the experience is like no other. I really did enjoy that. The story itself, although very sad as I mentioned, it was full of hope and very inspiring. I also really appreciated, again, although it might be triggering, how the author wasn't shy of showing some of the horrible things that Aduni has to go through in the book, you know, showing that to us, and that they're real and it does happen still, particularly for some children. And yeah, I really felt that it was kind of impactful in that way, and just kind of took you, it kind of centered things and made you see things in a bigger picture. Cons are, this one is abridged by Jill Waters and Isabel Creed, so I do wonder how much is cut out of it, and what I'm missing for the full story. It didn't feel like I was missing anything whilst I was listening. It felt like a complete story, so that makes me curious even more as to what was cut out and why for the audio version. I don't really know how that sort of stuff works. I didn't really realise you could get abridged and non-abridged versions, so I'd like to know, you know, the differences of that. I think that would probably be the driving force, just because the story was good as well, but that would be the main driving force for me possibly getting a physical version and just seeing what the difference is, because yeah, it didn't really feel like, I think it's supposed to be a 300 and something page book, and I guess it didn't feel like that because I listened to it in one sitting in one evening, and usually that kind of length book would take me slowly throughout the week. But I don't know what it is in the breakdown of hours if you were just to sit there and listen, so maybe it did match up, I don't know. And I think this is something that quite a few people feel as well. I would have actually have liked some closure to Aduni's life, because I wanted to know what happened next. Like, throughout this whole book you follow her as she's striving for a better life. The main key goal is to just get an education and learn and grow as an individual, and I just wanted to know, you know, what happened next, because it's swelling to that point. You definitely know that this is gonna happen, she's gonna make it somehow, and then just when all this is possibly happening, the story ends, and you're like, well, what happens with her education? What happens to some of the relationships that, you know, the kind people that helped her along the way? What happened to them? Did she go back and visit them? What happened? All these sort of things. I just feel like you were working towards something and then you didn't really get it. So I think that's probably why half a star was docked for myself, because I just felt like it was almost taken away, that the thing that you were aiming to get, you didn't get it at the end basically. But other than that, it was a very enjoyable story, and I would totally recommend you guys to check it out if you haven't already. So lastly, the book I finished right at the very end of July is Girl, Woman, Other, which was one of the winners of the Booker Prize for 2019. Didn't realise I've got 2 Booker Prizes winners here, which is cool. That was a nice kind of uplifting thing to read, some winners. So yeah, Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo was fantastic. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars as well. So this is kind of like a generational story following 12 people, mainly black, mainly women, and they, wow. So each chapter has 3 point of views that you're reading from. Let me just show you the contents just briefly so you kind of get a visual of what I mean. So there's not a lot of chapters, but they're broken down into like these parts. So chapter 1 you have 3 characters, chapter 2 3 characters, and so on and so forth. So yeah, until you get 12 characters. And originally they mainly seem very different, but a lot of them are connected. So some of them are like mother and daughters, some of them are friends to the family and stuff, and they connect in ways you wouldn't have expected, because the ending I was not ready for. I was shocked. I was not expecting it to end that way, and as I was coming to the end I was reading faster and faster, more than I could actually absorb, so I had to keep going back and reading over it again because I just wasn't expecting it. And yeah, so it features a lot of diversity. We've got a lot of gender conversations and topics, we've got a lot of sexuality conversations and topics, a lot of political conversations and topics, feminism, but black feminism and how it differs from white feminism, and there's just so much that it's funny because it feels so like these characters feel so real. It's a fictional story, but you can imagine these people existing, both in history and in contemporary times. And again, that's one of my main like points that I loved. I feel that together, blending historical fiction with contemporary fiction, it works, because those are both genres that I don't really read a lot of separately, but together it just, something just clicks, and I loved the blend of it. Writing style is very interesting. There's no punctuation or capitalization at the beginning of its sentences, particularly for the capitalization, and so that was an experience when you're reading, you're like, oh okay. I did find that different, but I quite liked it. And then of course I did have a few favourite characters. Some of those were Yaz, Bumi, and who else did I really like? I loved Grace's story as well. But it's difficult because they're all so very different, but the stories just blend together so seamlessly. I might have to do a separate review, but I do have my Goodreads review as usual. That kind of gets what I'm trying to say better, I feel. I do feel, unfortunately, that some parts of the characters' lives were sort of flashed through. We'd sort of focus on a bit and then it flashed through, and you're like, oh, okay. And it made me wonder, perhaps if we had less characters, would we have been able to keep the same pace throughout? But then at the same time, I wouldn't know who to get rid of. I feel like they all equally have something amazing to give to the story, and ultimately the climax at the end, how it all comes together. Like, I can't imagine the story without any of the characters, you know what I mean? So it's a bit of a catch-22 there. The lack of speech marks did get a bit confusing for me personally. The other lack of punctuation was fine. It was easy to read, but I mean, sometimes if I'm reading aloud, it was difficult to know when to take a break, because sometimes I do like to read aloud just to feel the words. But yeah, the speech marks for me sometimes just, or the lack of, got in the way of knowing who was talking and when someone was talking. But overall, this was a fantastic book. I feel like I've not given it justice enough. It was just great. It was so good, and I loved every minute of it. I felt like I was reading it for ages, but 15 days, that's not really too long when you think about it. And to be invested in such a story, I almost wanted to be in there longer, you know. But yeah, please check this out if you haven't already. It is a very deserving winner of this prize, and hopefully more. And I will definitely be going back and reading more of this author's books, see which ones interest me too. So yeah, that is it for this video. Let me know what you've been reading during July. I would love to know if you have any recommendations on the books that I've read in this video that you think I might like, or you want some opinions on, then feel free to suggest them in the comments too. And yeah, oh, before I definitely go, I have a July reading vlog that I need to edit. So that's why I felt like some of these books I talked about elsewhere, because I talked about them in that video. So yeah, I haven't edited that together yet, so hopefully that one will be up maybe after this one, or a couple of videos after this video, if you're interested in, like, again, in the moment experiences of reading some of these books. But yes, as I was saying, I will let you go now. I need to do the food shopping. I shall speak to you in another video soon. Bye. But then you